Hello everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got another brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. You know, when you love someone, you assume the best in them. Even when things get rough, you hold on to hope. You tell yourself, this is just a phase, we'll figure it out. That's what I did. My name is Duke, and I'm not going to sit here and act like my marriage was perfect. It wasn't. I had my own struggles. My business was failing, money was tight, and I was constantly stressed, trying to keep things together. Cassandra and I weren't as close as we used to be, and yeah, I noticed the distance. But I never thought for a second that she was pulling away because there was someone else. So I decided to do something about it. Our anniversary was coming up, and I figured maybe we just needed a moment, something to remind us why we fell in love in the first place. I planned a nice dinner, somewhere special. I wanted to make her feel cherished again, to show her that even though life had been hard, I was still here. What I didn't know was that Cassandra had already found her happiness elsewhere. The night before our anniversary, we were just at home, unwinding after a long day. I was sitting on the couch, and she was lying back, half watching something on TV. The night before our anniversary, we were at home, going about our usual routine. Cassandra had just grabbed a towel and was heading to the bathroom for a shower when I asked, "What are we eating tonight?" She paused in the doorway, glancing over her shoulder. "Just use my phone and order our regular stuff," she said casually before disappearing into the bathroom. It was a simple moment, something that had happened countless times before. But fate has a cruel way of playing with people. As I unlocked her phone, a message notification popped up at the top of the screen. And in one single moment, everything in my life shifted. "Damn, babe, I'll miss you this weekend. But I get it, anniversary and all. Can't wait to see you next week." I read it again. Then again. My mind went blank for a second. The shock was so overwhelming that my brain refused to process it. Without even thinking, my hands moved. I clicked the message and opened the chat, and that's when I saw it all. I wasn't prepared. The messages stretched back for months. Every conversation was filled with excitement, desire, and worst of all, intimacy. My wife had told this man that she wouldn't be available over the weekend because of our anniversary. And him? He wasn't upset. He understood. He was patient. He was already making plans for their next meetup. I kept scrolling. My fingers were trembling, but I couldn't stop. Each message I read took another piece of my heart and crushed it. She had been living out fantasies with him. There were things in those messages that I never even thought she'd be interested in. Things I know she would never have done with me. That was when I realized this wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a one-time thing, a slip-up. She had built an entire secret life with this man. And yet, every night, she came home to our bed. Anger surged through me, but I knew I needed proof. Moving quickly, I began taking screenshots of every message, every picture, every sickening detail of their conversations. As soon as I was done, I transferred everything to my own phone, securing it in case she tried to delete the evidence later. When I finally put her phone down, my heart was still pounding. The truth was now mine to hold, but what I would do with it, I wasn't sure yet. I felt my whole world tilt. But I didn't react. Not yet. Cassandra, meanwhile, had finished her shower and was in front of the mirror, going through her usual night routine, moisturizing her skin, tying her hair up, completely at ease. She hummed softly to herself, oblivious to the storm brewing just a few feet away. She had no idea. After reading those messages that night, everything changed. My life would never be the same again. I could have confronted her right then and there. I could, but I didn't. I needed to think through the whole thing before saying a thing. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. I walked into the living room. I grabbed the remote, turned on the TV, and tried to focus on anything that wasn't the reality crashing down around me. But no matter what played on the screen, my mind was consumed by the things I just saw. When it was finally bedtime, I still couldn't bring myself to go into that room. The thought of lying beside her, of feeling her warmth next to me, knowing what she had been doing behind my back. It made my stomach turn. I stayed on the couch, lost in my thoughts. But as the night dragged on and I assumed she had fallen asleep, I finally stood up. Slowly, I walked to the bedroom, dreading every step. As we were in bed, she rolled over toward me, resting a hand on my chest. Then she lifted her head slightly and leaned in to kiss me goodnight. I pulled away and didn't know when these words slipped from my mouth. "I'd kiss you, but I don't want to taste your boyfriend." Cassandra froze, her lips hovering inches from mine. Her eyes, still heavy with sleep, widened in an instant. Then, slowly, she pulled back. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice shaky, her expression carefully blank. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how predictable she was. How quickly she slipped into denial mode as if she thought she could gaslight her way out of this. I didn't bother playing along. I stood up, reached over to my nightstand, picked up my phone, and opened the folder where I had saved everything. Then, in the same calm voice, I started reading. Line by line, word for word, her own words, her messages to him. I barely got through the first few messages before she cracked. She lunged for my phone, desperate to grab it away. "Wait, just let me explain," she cried, trying to snatch it from me. But I was faster. I pulled back, stepping off the bed, keeping it just out of reach. She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing, her hands covering her face. "I'm sorry," she choked out between ragged breaths. "It was a mistake, Duke. It was a moment of weakness." I said nothing. I was just tempted. That's all it was. I wanted to explore my kinks, but you were always busy, and I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I tilted my head, studying her. And then I asked, in the calmest voice I could muster, "How do you feel knowing what you do with your mouth, but still coming to kiss me with it?" She didn't answer. Because what could she say? She just sat there, frozen, shaking, her tears rolling down her face. And I didn't care anymore. Without another word, I turned around and walked out of the room, leaving her there alone, in the mess she had created. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't sleeping next to her. The days after that night were a blur. I wish I could tell you I had some grand revelation, that I woke up the next morning with a clear mind and a solid plan. But I didn't. Instead, I just existed. I went to work, came home, went to work again, came home again. I barely spoke. I barely ate. I barely even thought. I just kept moving, one day at a time, like a man trapped in the routine of a life that no longer felt like his own. And Cassandra? She acted like nothing had happened. She attempts to force normalcy back into our marriage. She would ask about my day like she always used to, throwing in a soft smile here and there, hoping I'd return it. She would linger near me, standing just a little too close, touching my arm when she spoke, as if reminding me that she was still there. At night, she would slide into bed beside me, but I never turned to face her. The space between us felt like an ocean. I was there, but I was gone. When her casual attempts didn't work, she tried harder. One evening, I came home late. She was already in the kitchen, the smell of food filling the house. My favorite meal. I walked in and saw the neatly set table, the plates waiting, the wine poured. She stood there, hands clasped in front of her, eyes hopeful, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I just looked at the plate, then walked past it and went straight to the bedroom. I didn't touch the food. For the next week, she kept trying, but I could feel the desperation creeping in. She wanted me to talk, to react, to get angry. Anything would have been better than the silence I gave her. But I had nothing left to say. I didn't see her the same way anymore. And that's when I knew. This marriage, it was already over. One evening after work, I called her into the living room. When she finally sat down, I didn't waste any time. I reached into my bag, pulled out a set of divorce papers, and placed them on the table in front of her. She stared at them for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she looked up at me, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What is this?" she asked, even though she already knew. My voice was calm when I spoke. "Sign these, or I share your secret affair with everyone you know." For a split second, I saw something in her expression, shock, maybe even a little fear. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew that if I wanted to, I could destroy whatever respectable image she had left. Then, like clockwork, the tears came. She burst into fresh sobs, her hands trembling as she reached for the papers. I didn't say anything. I just watched as she broke down right in front of me. I imagine in her mind this wasn't supposed to happen. Maybe she thought I'd eventually forgive her, that things would go back to the way they were. Maybe she thought time would make me forget. But this wasn't something I could forget. I waited as she picked up the pen, her fingers shaking. She wiped her face, then signed her name. With each stroke of the pen, our marriage died. And that was it. There was no big fight, no dramatic last-minute pleas. Just a quiet ending to something that should have lasted a lifetime. Cassandra still had her job and her money. On paper, she was fine. But what she lost was so much greater. She lost a stable home. She lost a husband who would have done anything for her. And worst of all, she lost the respect of everyone who would ask, "Why did your marriage end?" And when that question came, I wondered, will she tell the truth? You'd think that once the divorce was finalized, that would be the end of it. That she'd sign the papers, accept the consequences, and move on. But that's not what happened. Cassandra didn't want to let go. At first, the messages were subtle. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" A random meme she thought I'd find funny. A nostalgic text about "remember when we used to" moments. I ignored them all. Then the messages started getting longer. She told me she missed us, that she missed what we had. She said she missed the way I used to look at her, the way I held her, the way we could talk about anything. She told me she was lonely now, that no one else understood her the way I did. It was almost funny, almost. Because of the way she spoke, you'd think she was a widow mourning the death of a husband she had loved with all her heart. Like she hadn't been the one to destroy our marriage with her own hands. She wanted to pretend she was the victim. I wasn't interested. Then one day, she sent a message that actually made me pause. "We don't have to remarry. We can just live together again." I stared at my phone for a long time, rereading those words. I imagined her sitting wherever she was, actually believing that I'd be desperate enough to take her back under any circumstances. That maybe I'd be weak enough to let her crawl back into my life. So I sent her one final message. One that would make it clear that I was never going to be a part of her life again. Go cohabit with your young lover. That was it. That was the final nail in the coffin. She didn't reply after that. Maybe because she finally got the message. Maybe because she knew there was nothing left to say. Some people throw away love for temporary pleasure. They risk everything, their home, their marriage, the person who would have stood by them no matter what, for a moment of excitement. And when they finally realize their mistake, it's already too late. I moved past her. I built something new for myself. And if you ever find yourself in my shoes, I hope you do the same. But let me ask you, what would you have done? Some of you might think I should have gotten revenge, done something to hurt her back, and made her feel the same kind of betrayal she put me through. Trust me, in the moment those thoughts crossed my mind. But in the end, I chose to walk away. No screaming. No begging. No second chances. What about you? If you found yourself in my situation, if you discovered your partner had been living a double life, how would you handle it? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to hear different perspectives. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a relative, anyone who might be ignoring the signs, share this with them. They might need this story more than you think.